Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking about how to catch a new personal best. How to catch that fish of a lifetime, that giant bass that you have been searching for, and how to do it right now. We're talking the next couple of weeks before we get into summer. Last year, about this same time, we did a very similar video outlining what to do during this exact period, from right now up until the full moon in June. Well, I am happy to report that a lot of you took that seriously, and the feedback was incredible from guys that actually went out and did it. The biggest fish, there were multiple double-digit fish caught by you guys. The biggest one that I know of was a 13.2 caught on a line through swimbait. It is incredible how key this short little period really is and how big of a bass you really can go out and catch. So here is the deal. Right now, in most of the country, the spawn's winding down. There are still some spawning fish, so we're going to briefly talk about that. We'll start there. But then we're going to talk about what to do if your fish are done, which is most people. Those fish post-spawn, so huge frame, skinny belly, post-spawn, they go out and they've got one more really predictable feed cycle. One more time where they're going to go out and they're going to feed aggressively, and they're really, really easy to specifically target. Then we move into summer. Now, it's not that you can't catch big fish in the middle of summer on a swim bait or on anything else, but in this window, you can very specifically target them. You can go after them, throw key baits, and target just that giant bass. And that's what today is about. So let's start with the sight fishing aspect of it, and then we'll go from there. On the sight fishing side of it, keep it simple. We've been doing sight fishing videos for a couple of months now. I'll even link a couple of them for you down in the video description if you missed them. But in short, if you're looking for the biggest fish, if you want your shot at a giant, a jig and a bluegill swimbait are probably the best way. Now, every bedfish is different. You can catch them on different things. We've covered that. But again, a jig and a bluegill swimbait are your go-tos. This little guy, the Savage Gear Bluegill, we started playing with late in the spawn this year. Tim talked about it in a video. A bunch of you guys were wishing that we had underwater footage of it so you knew how this bait behaved. It is that perfect size that those fish can just come in and engulf. They offer it with that jig hook as well as with a weedless rig. Personally, I prefer a jig hook, that exposed hook, so that if those fish really grab it, they can hook themselves. And then the jig, you know, a jig with a little bit of blue in it. We've talked about this for months. That magic cross swirl color, a jig can do an incredible amount of damage. And when you get those fish on a jig, when you hit that monster bedfish with a jig, that weed guard is working for you, that big hook is working for you, and you've got really good odds of actually landing that fish. That's critical. So let's set sight fishing aside because most people are done with that. Let's talk about the rest of it. What is the deal? Why the full moon in June? And then what baits? We're going to break this up. We've got big soft swim baits, we've got hard swim baits, and we've got top water, or the three categories you're going to use to really target these fish. So here's what takes place. After the fish stop spawning, they tend to back off and they settle and they recuperate a little bit. And then after that, they go to their summer haunts. Most of them go out to outside structures. A few of the big ones will stay up in the grass. Most go out. But right in between, and it's interesting, it's something about this moon, coast to coast. I'm talking a guy in California and a guy on the East Coast and a guy in the Midwest will all experience the same thing at the same time. Those fish that have backed down and recovered, leading into that full moon in June, so the 5th, June 5th is coming quick. Leading up to that moon, those fish do one more big binge where they are specifically targeting big meals, and they're extremely susceptible to being fooled. They've wrapped up the spawn, they're hungry, And if you place a bait well, they will eat it. Like I said, right after last year's video, the feedback was incredible. Guys catching 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, 10s, 12s, 13 pounders all over the country. It's amazing. Do not miss the opportunity this year. You've got a few days between here and there. It will build all the way to that full moon. And then once that full moon passes, it's like a light switch. Those fish make the move to their summer pattern, and it is done. Now, that's not to say you can't catch them, but you will no longer specifically target a giant, just a giant, with these baits that predictably. You can go out and throw big baits and throw big baits, and you've still got a shot at a really big one all the way through the rest of the year. This is prime time. So let's start with soft baits. We'll go soft baits, hard baits, then topwater to wrap it up. We are throwing bigger baits during this period. These are the fish that have come off the spawn. They've recuperated. They want to bulk back up. They don't want to screw around. Given a choice between a little tiny shad and a great big gizzard shad, they're going gizzard shad. Given a choice between eating a crawdad on the bottom or running down a rainbow trout, they're eating the trout. So what you want to do is you want to focus on those bigger offerings. Both of these are baits that I've got confidence in. Matt Lure's shad, that big gizzard shad. If you're in the South, anywhere that's got a big population of gizzards, especially if you have cleaner water, they are after that profile. This is the time you want to throw it. You can slow fish it on bottom. If you've got murkier water especially, stay closer to bottom. If you've got cleaner water, we're going to raise up off the bottom. And I'm going to circle back to that. We're coming back to that key thing in just a few minutes. The other one, the Savage Gear line through trout. And not necessarily the trout color, but that line through has done some great things for us. You know, the Huddleston is another one, but the Huddleston is constantly proves difficult to get. The Savage Gear has been available. You could rig it with a top hook or a belly. If you're bottom fishing, top hook it. If you're going to be lifted up, then you're going to belly hook. You just have a single treble here on the belly. Throw it out, mid-column, just roll that bait, and they just come out and eat them. Now these baits, soft baits, there's a plus and a minus. The plus is that they're incredibly realistic. They are incredibly lifelike. And if a fish comes up to eat it, odds are they will fully engulf that bait. They will devour it. Downside of a soft bait is that there's no way to trigger a strike with these baits. You are reliant on the bass coming up, believing that that is indeed a trout as it's swimming by, and eating it. If they come up and they're following it and you can see them, there's really nothing you can do. With this style of tail, there's really nothing you can do. You are waiting on realism to pay off and for that fish to believe and to strike. That's all you can do. Just continue that retrieve. And if that big fish doesn't eat, the best thing you can do is give it a little time. Maybe try a little different positioning. Typically, these fish aren't going anywhere. Unless they are actively chasing bait fish, these true giants, the one you're after, they sit on a spot and they own that spot. So now you know where they are. Come back a little while later, reposition the boat, try another cast. Notice I said a cast. Don't make 25 casts at that fish. Don't pepper them. If they don't think it's real the first time, they won't think it's real the 17th time. You're just killing your odds if you do that. If you come back and you fire and they follow again or you don't see them, give it another break. Wait a little while. Try a different time of day. Try a totally different direction. Try from the other side. But again, just those single casts, once you've identified the location of that fish, it's almost like muskie fishing. You are hunting one bass. You are hunting that giant. Don't educate them prematurely. Make perfect casts, roll through there, and hope that they come up and just devour that thing. And then if they do, you know, I'll link, I won't even talk about gear. I'll link the equipment that we use, the exact combo we use, and a budget combo as well, so that if you get your giant bite, you don't blow it. Because the worst thing you could do is take this advice, go to the lake, especially this spring. We are still stuck at home. Notice I'm sitting on the bank. We are not out on the boat. We still can't get on our own lake right now. A lot of people in this country have gone through the exact same thing. Most of the people in this country. Now, a lot can fish again. If you can get back out on the water, this was a rough spring. You finally got a chance at a big one. You missed the whole spring. Now is the time. You don't want to blow your chance when it comes. So proper gear, and when they eat it, you hit them hard and you just grind. Don't pump that rod. These are all things we talked about before. Smash that hook set and just go, 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 go all the way to the boat. The more you fight a bass on a big bait, the more likely you are to lose them. Get them to the boat or get them to the bank. So soft baits. Let's talk hard baits. Because again, I said the downside is that you can't draw a reaction. I'm going to pull 3 hard baits here for you. First one, the S-Waver. That's just our standard glide bait. You guys know how much Tim and I love the S-Waver, how much damage we've done with the S-Waver over the years. We have just smashed fish on them. So many giant fish have eaten this thing. You guys see this coming through? It's like it's snowing. This is cotton coming off the cottonwoods. That's how you know it's prime time out here. I would do anything to be out here on the water right now, but that's all right. I'd rather get you guys dialed in so you can go out and catch one of these giant bass and then tell us about it. We'll live vicariously through you this time. So the S-Waver is an incredible bait because you've got all this hardware. So you lose a little bit of the realism. It's got this interesting action. It does this through the water. But when the fish come up, you can twitch these baits. You can get it to cut and dart. And when you do that, you draw a reaction. The fish sees the natural swim. They come up, and they'll just sort of get behind it. And you do those 2 twitches, and they T-bone that thing. So you have the ability to draw that reaction strike that you do not have with a soft bait. 2 other baits in that same type of category. These are both Bluegill Profiles, which in the past I have shied away from. You guys that have been with us have watched over the last couple of years as I've turned more and more and more towards these Bluegill Profiles. But the reason why I've changed is because the profiles have changed. In the past, all the bluegill baits that you could get were these big, tall things, big, exaggerated fins. The hookup to land ratio was horrible. Both of these baits have great profile. They still are perfect bluegill imitators, great profile, but you've got a good hookup ratio. So this one, this is Mike Buca's Bull Glide. This, in my mind, is a speed bait. This is cover and water. Throw it, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 pause, burn, pause. Pure power, pure aggression. You are looking for a shallow water fish here. So again, I told you we're going to come back and talk about where to be in the water column, and we are still going to come back to that. But know that this one, this is a shallow water, murkier water, around grass. That's where this one's going to shine. Fish it fast. The other one, the Gantarelle, fish it erratically. The Gantarelle, the way we fish this guy, is some handle turns and a bump. And that bait will glide off. It gets this fast little kick and then a cruise to the side. Fast little kick, cruise to the side. Very similar. So the S-Waver is this slower, more methodical. Then you've got the Gantarelle, which is going to get a little more going on. And then you've got the Bluegill, which is just full speed ahead. So depending on where you are, Bluegill, you're up there in the grass and the shallows trying to get that core response. The S-Waver, you're out over open water, deeper water, clearer water, trying to draw a fish up and out. And the Gantarelle is somewhere in between. See how we're using these as different tools for the job, depending on what type of water body you are on. Last, topwater, and then we'll circle back and we'll talk about the logistics of how you're going to do this for these fish. For a wake bait, the Spro BBZ, and this guy has been through it. 8-inch bait, specifically the BBZ floater. Again, this is a bait that will trigger a response. You can just slow fish it on the surface, It gets this nice kick to it, and it drives a wake, and it will pull fish up. Again, we're getting back to when you want each style of bait. But this is a dynamite bait because not only can you do that with it, but you can get aggressive. You can speed it up and pause, and you'll get this aggressive kick, and then it'll turn off. Aggressive kick, turn off. And it's a loud bait. It'll pull fish a long way. And during this period where the water is warm and the fish are tending to be really aggressive, that loud, obnoxious, fast, aggressive bait gets bit. So that is a great option. And then two more. Depending on the size of your bait fish, you can kind of match the hatch here, if you will. Two walking baits. This guy is from G-Rat. And again, we'll link all the baits in the video description along with favorite colors. But this is a G-Rat. This is a Megabass, the Mega Dog. The Megabass is a big bait. It's got a rattle in it. It's aggressive. It's loud. The G-Rat, smaller, more subtle. Hear the difference? But both are big profiles. Both will draw giant, giant bites. This guy, a little bit tighter walk. This guy, big, wide, loud, obnoxious walk. So it just depends how big of a fish are you trying to pull up? How far are you trying to pull them? That's how you determine the bait. So that's it for baits. Now let's talk logistics. What does this look like? We recently did a video about where the fish go after they spawn. We broke it down by style of lake. Do you recall that? If you remember that, the key detail in there was one, current. I guess there were a few key details. Grass versus current, muddy versus clear. So what I want you to do, knowing what style of lake you are on, we're going to make this really simple. We're going to go off whether or not you have grass, a lot of grass, and whether or not you have clear water. The muddier and shallower your water is, and the more grass you have, the more I want you to gravitate to the faster, louder, more aggressive baits. You want to fish that right on your grass lines, outside grass edge. It's still coming up in most of the country. You don't have those hard and fast grass edges like slop lines yet, but the grass is emerging. You've got grass clumps coming up subsurface. You will pull those fish right off those clumps. They suspend in them. If you're in 2 or 3 feet of water, you'll pull them off the bottom. If you're in 8 or 10 feet of water, you'll pull them right off the grass beds. They hover in that grass and just absorb that sunshine as they recover. So you want those faster, more aggressive baits. You want that bowl glide. You want either of those big, obnoxious topwaters, depending on how big your fish are and how big your bait fish are. That's key. You don't need to throw this if the main forage they're eating is bluegills or 4-inch threadfin shad. You do want it if they're eating big gizzard shads or alewives or who knows what else, any of those bigger profiles. Now, let's talk about the cleaner water, because this is the side that gets really fun. Cleaner water, in that same video I just referenced, we talked about the color line. This is the time to focus on the color line. Remember me telling you that the biggest fish any of our subscribers caught during the full moon in June last year was a 13-pounder? That fish came off a color line on a swim bait. That is what this is about. So here's the deal. These fish in the clear water lakes, I don't care if you're on a highland reservoir, if you're on a lowland but it's cleaner, if you're on a natural lake but it's clean. If it's clean, the fish are most likely, the big ones, the ones you want, are most likely to be on the color line, where the water transitions from that light color up against the shore out to a dark color. Now, depending on how deep your lake or how steep the walls of your lake are, that will determine how deep that color line is. So in a lake that's just got a little bit of clarity, fairly slow tapered bank, you might find that color line up there in 5, 6, 8, 10 feet of water. But in a crystal clear reservoir, that color line might be on 35 feet of water. It doesn't matter, but keep in mind, fish are on the color line. Your goal is to pull them up. They suspend this time of year, and on this full moon in June, they hunt. They will follow that color line. They'll pick a point that's got a perfect color line on it, and they'll hover out there. And if a trout or a kokanee or a bluegill or a gizzard shad or anything else comes over the top into their zone, they're coming for it. So the deeper and clearer the water, the bigger and slower the bait. Take that big BBZ, take that big Megabass Mega Dog, take the big Savage Gear line through trout, high in the water column, the S waver. Fish them slow and methodically up near the surface, and you will draw the fish to you. If you're throwing the Savage, just keep on coming and hope that they come up and just kill that thing. Again, it looks perfect. There's not a lot on there to tell them that it's fake, so they're going to come up and just devour it. These hard baits, let them come. Again, clear water, you can see them. Let them come, and when they get right to the bait, that's when you do your twitches. If it's an S-waver, twitch it twice. If it's a BBZ, give it a rip. If it's a walking bait, break your cadence. Either speed one up or kind of stall out. Either way, just change the cadence. That's when they'll strike. If your water is a little bit murkier or a little bit shallower, that's how you get into those in-betweener baits. You don't need to pull them quite as far, but you still want that giant bite. So guys, hopefully this makes sense. I think it will, and I'm very excited to hear how you guys do. You've got a handful of days to get ready, but even today, it's already happening. Get out there on the water. We have all had a rough spring. Some of us are still trapped and not able to get on the water. Some of you guys have been on the whole time, but a lot of guys have been kept off the water. They missed their opportunity at a big bass. The good news is you didn't miss them all. You've got one more incredible opportunity right now. Make the best of it. Go out there, focus on that big bite. From now up until that full moon in June, those last 2 or 3 days coming into that moon, onto the moon, that's your very best shot. That's what you've got on the backside of that moon. That's when we start putting this stuff away, focusing on true summer patterns. Not that you can't still do this, not that it won't work, but you'll never have another opportunity where all the big fish are lined up on that same pattern and you can specifically target them until we get back around to the cold months. Then you can do it again all the way back until the full moon in June. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Down in the comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I would love to hear your successes. If you enjoyed it, again, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.